Belinda Pena. I'm the Work Study and Outreach Coordinator here at Austin Community College in the Financial Aid Office. I'd like to welcome you today to this episode of The Forum. The Forum is a roundtable show that gives us a space to discuss pertinent topics concerning ACC and our community with various faculty, staff, and students. Today we will be discussing how to pay for college, a question many of our students have and prospective students have on the daily. It can be a daunting task to know where to even begin when it comes to funding your college education, but we hope the discussion today will help shed light on just how possible it is to figure out how to pay for ACC. Joining us today is Michaela McCarty, who is a financial aid specialist here at Austin Community College, and our very own student, Moniece Fleming, who is a broadcast journalism major. So let's just jump right in. The first thing I'd like to cover with y'all is really some financial aid basics. Financial aid can mean a lot of things, so I think it's important to set those basic definitions for financial aid. In short, financial aid is a type of money or is money that's given to students or borrowed, or even you work for it in some cases, and you use that money to help pay for your college education. And it could be used for a variety of different expenses, not just your tuition and fees. It can be used for your miscellaneous expenses like your childcare, your rent, your utilities, your food, everything that goes into being a successful student here at ACC. And I think it's important to note that just because a lot of students don't realize, you can use your financial aid for more than just tuition and fees. It's really everything else that goes into that. So that being said, there's some key types of financial aid that we're going to drill in on, and that's grants, which is free money that you don't have to pay back, loans, which is borrowed money that of course you would pay back, and work study opportunities. And Moniece is actually one of our work study employees, so she knows all about that work study. Students work either on campus or off campus. They earn $15 an hour and $15.50 if they're working off-site. All those types of financial aid that I've just mentioned are through the FAFSA application, which is really a short version of the free application for federal student aid. And I'd like to focus on that for a little bit. So Michaela, would you mind breaking down a little bit and telling us about the FAFSA application?
Of course. So the FAFSA is the first step in the process to receive financial aid to go to college. It's a free application to request federal and state funds to cover your cost of attendance. So those, the list of expenses that you mentioned earlier, we call that the cost of attendance. So this covers it while you're in school. It is important to note that you only have to apply through the FAFSA. You don't apply for these types of aid separately, since it's all one application. Each college that receives your FAFSA will determine what they can offer you based on available funds and your eligibility.
Nice. So that's great. Thanks for breaking that down, Michaela. Can you tell us a little bit more about where the student can complete the FAFSA and what are some of the basic eligibility requirements?
So there's a couple different places students can go. The most popular way is online at FAFSA.gov. Then they just developed a free app called My Student Aid. Again, it is free. You just need to go to your Play Store, download it. If you don't remember My Student Aid, you can just search for FAFSA. It will pop up. Now, some of the basic eligibility requirements: you do have to have a high school diploma and a GED or GED. You have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen such as a permanent resident. You also must maintain a 2.0 GPA and complete most of your classes. Then folks who were assigned male at birth will have to meet the selective service requirements.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot that goes into being eligible for the FAFSA. The good thing is that we do have this all listed on our website. So if a student just goes to austincc.edu/findaid, they can see that full list of eligibility requirements that you just went over, Michaela. So thank you for doing that.
Of course.
So what are some of the things that are needed to complete the FAFSA if I'm ready to get started?
So there are several things, and it will depend on whether you're dependent or independent. So if you're dependent, you're going to need both yours and your parents' social security numbers. If you are a non-citizen, you're going to need your alien registration number. Then you'll need records of income and current assets such as cash, checking, savings, and any investments you and your parents might have. Now, if you're an independent student, you're going to need yours and your spouse's if you're married.
Okay, cool. So if I am an independent student, what does that mean? Am I like older than a certain age? What does that mean?
For the most part. So there is a dependency question section on the FAFSA. If you're able to say yes to one of those questions, you'll be an independent.
Cool. Awesome. So if I have all my things ready, when should I start applying for financial aid?
We recommend that students apply each year, even if they don't think that they'll be eligible. In reality, most students are eligible for something.
Okay.
The FAFSA is available for the immediate academic school year on October 1st every calendar year. So if you're planning on attending school this fall, 2020, the 2020-21 FAFSA is already available. It's already out there. We do want people to keep in mind that these funds are first come, first serve, so it's important to apply early. So we do recommend you apply as soon as you can.
Gotcha. Thanks for clarifying. So just to say that if a student does want to start in the fall semester for fall 2020, they can already do their FAFSA application now.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
It's already out there. We've actually already have some students finish everything.
Right. And what about a student that is applying now for this current semester? Is that possible too?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So if you're still going to school for the 2019-2020 school year, you can still get aid for that even though we're halfway through the semester or halfway through the year.
Okay, cool. So that's good to know. That means if I'm a student that's starting this semester, I could still apply for financial aid and get some funds potentially, and I could prepare for next school year, which starts fall 2020.
We have some students knock it out at the same time.
Perfect. So where can I go to get help? You mentioned that they do them at the same time if I'm a student that needs help with that application.
Yeah, so students who wish to be helped in person can attend one of our workshops. For example, we host several throughout the year, like the first week of October, we have Financial Aid Week, and then we host Financial Aid Day in the summer. At these events, students can get one-on-one support completing the FAFSA or TASFA or even their scholarship applications.
Okay.
Students can also stop by a campus financial aid office for hands-on support as well.
Great. I do want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier. You mentioned that for the FAFSA application, you have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, like a permanent resident. But I know that there's some students out there that may not meet that eligibility requirement. So can you elaborate on some of the options that they have?
I'm so glad you asked, Belinda. So students who are neither U.S. citizens or eligible non-citizens do have the option to apply for what's called the Texas application for state financial aid, better known as the TASFA.
Got it.
The TASFA has most of the same eligibility requirements as the FAFSA. However, this is specifically for Texas residents who are undocumented. To gain Texas residency for the TASFA, students must have lived in Texas for at least 3 years prior to gaining or receiving their Texas diploma or GED. There are some other specific requirements that students can check out for Texas residency at austincc.edu/undocumented.
Okay, great. So it looks like we got those nailed out. We know that there's certain types of financial aid, and we have the FAFSA application that's going to potentially get students eligibility for grants, loans, and work study opportunities. And we even have a separate application for undocumented students called the TASFA. Now that we have all of that nailed out, I do want to hear from Moniz and hear about your experience applying for financial aid, since I think a lot of students can relate to that experience. The first thing I want to know is generally, what has been your experience applying for financial aid through that FAFSA application?
My experience. Well, it hasn't been too difficult, but it definitely has had its challenges. I would say that I've been able to fill it out and in full without too many issues.
Yeah. Did you have any support from like family or friends or staff even?
Well, I'm first generation student in my family, so they really didn't know how to help me. And then in high school, I wasn't very prepared for it then. So once I got to ACC is whenever I was able to go with like academic coaching, talk to financial aid as well, and then they were able to help me as well.
That's really good to know. I am also a first generation student, and my parents didn't know anything about the FAFSA. It was kind of like, what do you need? Here it is, please do it.
Right.
So I think that's definitely something a lot of students can relate to. A lot of the time we're just kind of trying to figure this all out on our own, but really we do have some resources, so I'm glad that you were able to come by our office and talk to us about that application. Is there anything that you wish you knew before you started?
I wish that I would have known that even though it's supposed to help you through every single thing when it comes to college, like you said, it's more than just the tuition, it's the living expenses, food and all that stuff. They really don't always give you enough for that.
That's true.
So being prepared ahead of that with your financial area, your stability would have been really nice to know more of that.
Yes, that's a really good point, and I think that's worth talking about a little bit more. So our financial aid office we're charged with trying to get students as much money possible when it comes to grants, loans, and work study. But in reality, it might not always meet those total expenses. So there's other ways that you can help pay for college, but at the end of the day, it might not be everything covered. So I'm sure a lot of students realize that going in, like, I wish I had known that I should be looking at other options besides just the FAFSA application. So do you have any questions that you still have, maybe, that you're still thinking, like, what's something about the FAFSA that you maybe still have a question about that we can talk about today?
Well, one, because my parents are now separated, but they're not legally divorced yet, and it makes filling out the FAFSA a lot more complicated because they have filed together before as married, but now they're trying to file separately. So they're still balancing and trying to base off of my own father's income, even though I don't live with him. So I'm trying to figure out, like, how can I just cut him out of it so that it could just be like, it's my mother and me. But
that's a really good question. So if a student's parents are separated, even if it's not finalized in court, they're actually separated and they decided to be separated, only one of those parents needs to go on the FAFSA application. So if your mom is your primary caregiver, in terms of maybe you've lived with her longer, she's provided more support to you, then she's the only person that needs to be going on that FAFSA application. Even if they filed together, the financial aid office is able to split that income, so it only reflects your mom's financial situation because she is your primary caregiver. So that's a really good question. I think a lot of questions come up in our office about marital status because not everyone has a traditional household, right? Everyone has different situations that they're just like, I don't know who to put where. And I think it's really good to know that you can come into our office anytime and ask that question, and we can help you determine who should actually be going on that FAFSA application. So that's a good one. Do you have any other ones for us?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a good one.
Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
Is ACC for moms?
Yes.
Is ACC for scientists?
Yes.
Is ACC for...
Yes. ACC is for everyone.
Welcome back to the forum where we're discussing how to pay for college. Before the break, we talked about different types of financial aid, as well as two different main applications. The FAFSA application, which is for U.S. citizens and eligible non-citizens. This is an application for grants, loans, and work study opportunities. We also talked about the TASFA application, which is specifically for undocumented Texas residents, and you can find out more about that TASFA application at austincc.edu/undocumented. So we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk more about the steps that go on after you submit that FAFSA application. A lot of the students that we work with will be doing the FAFSA and then they think maybe that's the end of the process. So we definitely want to break it down for everyone that's listening and for everyone here, what those steps entail. And the first step is really applying. So you've applied for financial aid through the FAFSA. The school usually takes about 2 to 3 days to get that FAFSA application, but that's not the end. They will use that application to determine what they can actually give you. So in Moniz, your case, you're going to UNT next year, so they're going to get a copy of your application and they're going to determine what they can give you based on their resources. So you might get a different financial aid package at UNT versus ACC because they might have other resources that they can give you. So whenever students are applying for financial aid through the FAFSA, it's important to list all of the schools that they're thinking of, especially if they're planning to transfer, because that school will then be able to see what they can give them based on that application. The second step is to track your status online. Most schools will have an online portal where students can go ahead and track the status of their application. Maybe they'll see that there's some missing documents that they need to turn in. Maybe they'll see that they have everything and now they're just waiting for financial aid to process that application. Here at ACC, we have a self-service portal. It's called self-service, and basically that's where you register for your classes, but that's also where you can check the status of your financial aid application. We typically advise that it takes about 4 to 6 weeks for the application to be processed because there's a lot that goes on in the back end for our team to go ahead and determine what the student is eligible for. Michaela, do you have an example of any common documents that the financial aid office usually asks for?
Yeah, so one of the common things that happens is students are often selected for a process called verification. Basically, we just need to verify everything on their FAFSA. So we'll request different documents for that, maybe some income, maybe a verification worksheet. In other cases, we just need to clear a transcript hold or perhaps the system didn't recognize your citizenship or your residency status, so we just need to verify that everything there is correct. And then other cases, sometimes we have to separate income, so we ask for a few other things for that.
That makes sense. And Michaela's actually part of our processing staff, so she knows all of the ins and outs of what might be potentially asked for on that FAFSA application. So now that everything's processed, the student now goes into the third step, which is actually accepting their funds. So Manice, you'll be able to touch base on this in a little bit, but basically the student does accept their awards online, and they can see everything that's offered to them in terms of grants, loans, or work study. In reality, it would be great if all three were offered, but that might not always be the case based on funding or based on eligibility. So you'll basically pick and choose what it is that you actually want to receive, and you can think hard about whether or not you want to take that student loan, or if maybe you want to wait on that until you go to a more expensive college potentially. Always accept the grant money, obviously, because the grant money is free and that's money you don't have to pay back. So that's usually our advice to students, is accept the grant money first and then think through if you want to take that loan or if you want to participate in that work study program. The last step is to actually receive the funds. So the funds are always applied to your tuition and fees first here at ACC. So if a student does have financial aid that's been offered to them, it's going to be applied to tuition and fees, and then any additional aid is given to them as a refund. So that's basically it. They apply, you track your status, you accept your funds, and then you receive your money once classes start. But there's some different payment options depending on whether you're a financial aid student or you're not a financial aid student. So Michaela and I are going to walk through those just so we're all on the same page about those. If a student is expecting enough financial aid to cover their full balance, they actually don't need to set up a payment plan. So that's really nice. If you have enough financial aid to cover your balance, you do not need to set up a payment plan as long as everything's accepted before that payment is due. Michaela, can you share what happens if a student does not have enough financial aid to cover their full balance?
Of course. So let's say they have a grant that's only going to cover part of their tuition or their balance. Okay. In that case, they can do something called the payment plan workaround. Now, this is different from our traditional payment plan, as you typically have to put down a down payment. The workaround, it counts your pending aid as the down payment. So students can set this up. They can arrange it if it's before the payment deadline or the payment plan deadline, so before school starts. Then the student will, after they put down the after they set up the payment plan in our office, they'll just make the remaining payments on the same day as a traditional payment plan.
Awesome. So yeah, that's great to know. If a student doesn't have enough financial aid to cover their balance, they can come to our office and set up that payment plan workaround, which allows them to pretty much skip that first payment, but then focus on those other two payments that come down the line in the semester.
Exactly.
There's some students that are going to be listening that don't have any financial aid. Maybe they just applied yesterday and the payment's due tomorrow and they don't know what quite to do. So what would be an option for those students?
In that case, students are going to want to do the traditional payment plan.
Okay.
So they will have to put down a down payment that same day. The down payment is 34% typically for the fall and spring. Okay. And then they'll have two remaining payments, which are about 30% of the remaining.
Got it. So if a student does not have any financial aid they're expecting, they can still do a payment plan here at ACC. They're just responsible to make all three of those payments.
Correct. And now if they go and finish their FAFSA later and it's determined that they are eligible, they can have that money reimbursed as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that's good. So yeah, any student out there that still needs to do their FAFSA, definitely just still get it in. Make sure you secure your payment plan. It is important to note, and we won't give all the details here, but if you go to austincc.edu/payment, there are some deadlines associated with that payment plan. So you can't always set up that payment plan, but as long as you're doing things in advance and it's before classes start, you should be able to secure that payment plan.
And it does vary from semester to semester, so it is a good idea to look.
To check that out, yeah. So going through these steps, I'd really like to hear what your experience was, Moniz, of going through those steps of financial aid, because again, financial aid during the FAFSA is the first step, but there's so many other things that go into it. How did you go about that process, or what would you like to share with other students?
Well, I didn't realize how complicated the process was once you submit.
Yeah.
Depending on your situation, of course, and with mine being with my parents being separated, I'd had to do the verification worksheet thing, so I had to print it out. And then it was simple though. All you're doing is asking the questions of whether or not who's living in your household and who's in school and getting funds. So I am the only one that is actually in school. I do have a brother as well, but he's not. So it made it easier for me to send in that information for ACC.
Gotcha. And did you use that self-service portal when you found out?
I did, yes. So accepting everything through self-service, and then looking and printing out the documents through that as well, and then doing work study through there. You have to make sure that it is on there and applied to your financial aid award. And once you see that, then you can actually go through and go on ACC's website and apply to the actual work study and then do your orientation.
Yeah. There's so many things involved depending on the aid. And I'm sure you realize that just kind of going through, depending on the type of aid you got, like work study is a good example. There's some additional things that you might have to do, like you have to go to an orientation, you have to turn in some extra forms. So it really is just a good idea to always monitor that self-service portal, because different things could pop up based on the funds that you accept, and work study is that example. Are there any questions or resources that you had throughout the process, and who did you go to help support you?
I think the biggest question that I probably had was like, why didn't I see my work study available to me at first? So I had to go to financial aid office and talk to them about it, and then I realized I actually had to fill out a whole entire form through them first before I could actually have it added to my financial aid award, because you have to make sure that you qualify for it. So
yeah, that's a good question. So with the work study, what you're referring to is basically not everyone gets the work study. So the work study is based on first come, first served funds. So one student might get work study offered to them, but by the time someone else applies, it might not be available at that point. So in that case, students can add themselves to a wait list. We do have an ongoing wait list at austincc.edu/work study. And at that point, if you don't get that work study offered, the wait list is really the last option. Funds are still not guaranteed, but it at least lets our office know that you're interested in the work study. So that's probably what you had to do, is maybe put yourself on that wait list so that we can see and offer you that work study funds, those work study funds. Great. Well, that's a good breakdown. Is there anything else that you can think of through that process that you wish other students would have known about?
Well, probably that you don't have to do it alone. So if you are going through the self-servicing and you're confused on what it's asking for, to make sure that you are asking those people at financial aid or whoever you are that's mentoring you to be able to ask those questions of like, what is this? What does this mean? How can I figure this out? Because there are things on there that different forms, you're like, how am I supposed to verify this? I don't know what you're asking for. So.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of people will sit at home and be like, what is this even? I don't know what they're asking for or why they're asking for it. But it really does just take maybe a phone call to our office or talking to us in person. We're not scary people, we promise. We definitely would love to help explain that, because we know that a lot of the forms that the federal government requests can be pretty intimidating. You know, they're asking for your income, they're asking for your household, and we know that those can be very sensitive topics, so we're definitely happy to help. I'm glad that you mentioned that. So go ahead and stay tuned for more information. We'll be right back after this break.
Hi, I'm Tung.
And I'm Ross.
We're your College Destination Center team. We're here to help you enroll and become an ACC student.
Before we get started, let's talk about the college. ACC's academic programs are divided into 10 areas of study. These 10 areas provide easy-to-follow paths to meet your academic and career goals. They're grouped together by similar careers. For example, the health sciences area of study includes nursing, sonography, and dental hygiene. Public and social services includes criminal justice, firefighting, and social work. You'll need to pick one of these 10 areas before you fill out the application. You can learn more and explore areas of study on our website. Visit austincc.edu/areas. If you already know what you want to study, you can include the name of the program and the award on your application. It's okay if you're not sure. Choose the area that interests you the most and let us help you explore careers and majors. If you change your mind later, you can change your major.
Now you're ready to start the application. Visit austincc.edu/apply. We posted a checklist you can download or drop by our office for a copy. To start an application, you'll need to create an account. It lets you log in later to submit important documents, including your school transcripts and test scores. The sooner you complete admission requirements, the sooner you can register for classes. Once you submit the application, we'll get in contact to guide you through the next steps.
If you're a student entering ACC with fewer than 12 credits, we'll help you sign up for an area of study information session. This additional step combines your advising session with a chance to meet other students, advisors, and faculty from your area of study. You'll learn more about the degrees, certificates, and career opportunities in that area. By the time you're done, you'll have the information you need and access to resources to help you reach your goals.
Our goal is to make sure you have the support you need through this process. If you ever have any questions, you can always give us a call. And remember, we'll be in touch through each step. Welcome to ACC.
Welcome back to the forum. I'm your host, Belinda Pena, and I'm joined by Michaela and Moniz. We have been talking about the different ways to pay for college, including the ins and outs of applying for grants, loans, and work study opportunities through that FAFSA application. We've talked about some really important steps when it comes to that FAFSA. Then you can find all of that information on austincc.edu/findaid. So what I'd like to talk about now is some resources outside of financial aid through the FAFSA. So we've talked about grants, loans, and work study, but there's a big one out there that I think really takes a lot of time and effort on the student's part, and that's scholarships applications. So scholarships, you can find them from a variety of different places, and I'd like to focus on some of the scholarships that ACC students should load up on. So Michaela, can you tell us about any scholarships you recommend here at ACC?
Yes, so there are several different types of scholarships available for students. The most common and the easiest one is the ACC Foundation Scholarships. It has over 600 scholarship opportunities, and it only requires one application and one essay. So it is a little bit easier.
Yeah.
There are also plenty of what we call external scholarships available to students from outside sources. For more details on that, I recommend students just checking out our website at austincc.edu/scholarships.
Yeah.
There you can find the other scholarships webpage. There we have some of our partners who offer scholarships directly to ACC as well as outside search engines. So if you just want to, instead of Googling a scholarship, you can use one of these search engines and specifically search for scholarships that might apply to you.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the ACC General Scholarship, just because I know when I was a student at ACC, or not at ACC in particular, but when I was a student, it was pretty scary just to type in scholarships into Google and be like, what is all of this? You know, like, what's right for me? What do I have the best chance of getting? And really, we like to recommend the ACC Scholarship just because you're doing one application with over 600 opportunities of scholarships. It's going to drill down for you on the ones that you're actually eligible for. So if you do that general scholarship application, it's going to go ahead and show you which ones you could actually be getting. So going into that ACC application, Michaela, how do students apply, and when should they be applying for that scholarship?
So students can apply for the ACC Foundation Scholarships online at that same website, austincc.edu/scholarships.
Okay.
For the upcoming fall 2020 semester, students can already apply for the scholarships. That deadline is April 1st. So if you're thinking about doing that, now is a really good time to get started. It will give you more than enough time to bang out the details in your essay and anything else you might need to collect.
Awesome. So do you know of any places students can go to get help with that scholarship application?
Yeah, so there's a few different resources available to our students. Right now, ACC does have our scholarship stations available until April 1st. Now, students can get year-round help at our campus learning labs. They offer hands-on support with applying with the application process or the essay writing part. There's also the Student Money Management Office. They offer great tips while searching for scholarships and useful tactics while applying.
Awesome. Well, that's really helpful, Michaela. Thanks for breaking that down for us. I think a lot of students may forego that process altogether just because they think they may not be eligible or they may not qualify. I know that when I was a student, I went ahead and skipped scholarships just because I thought, I don't know, I just thought I wasn't going to be eligible for it, or I thought I wasn't good enough for a certain scholarship. But now that I'm in the financial aid office, I realize how much money gets left on the table from students that don't apply for scholarships that they are more than eligible for or more than qualified to apply for. So on that same note, I do want to know what your experience has been as well, Moniz, like going through the scholarship application process. If you applied for the ACC scholarship, I'd love for you to talk about that. And if you applied for external scholarships, definitely we want to hear about that as well.
So before I came to ACC, when I graduated high school, I did not apply for any scholarships because it was the same thing as you, wasn't thinking that I was actually going to be able to get anything. And because applications was already intimidating for the fact that like you're already filling out so many essays and writing them just to get into schools, and then you have to do more of them. That's why it is good to fill out the scholarships and put in that extra work because of the fact that no one really does it. But now that I'm about to transfer to UNT, I cannot apply for the ACC scholarships because I can't take them with me.
Gotcha.
So, which really, really sucks.
Yeah.
Because I really wish I could bring them. But I have been applying for external ones. The only thing with those is that you don't want to pay for one. Like you should not be applying for any type of online scholarship application thing where you have to actually put in money to be able to get information about scholarships. I would not advise that at all. But there's a lot of them that are clickbait scholarship things. So it's like you click on it and the next thing you know, you're going to another application with a whole nother website. And that's probably been the most frustrating thing. But getting to the ones that are actually for you and making sure that you're picking scholarships that are going to be able to apply to you in ways that may not apply to others, like being a first generation or being a minority, whatever the case may be for you, making sure that you are definitely applying for those because not many people know about them. So that's been like my biggest thing and what I've been focusing on when I am applying for scholarships.
That's a really good strategy. It's like focusing on those scholarships that apply to you the most, because it's going to be a smaller population of people that you're really competing against in that sense. So have you looked into UNT scholarships?
I have. So that was the first thing I did. Once I applied, I made sure that I filled out their general application. But for UNT, they didn't have many other ones to actually apply to. But I know like financial aid office and the advising office always tells me to just apply to all of them, even if they may not apply to you, because at the end of the day, you might still get it. So it's better to just chance it than to not have applied at all, and then you might have missed out on money. So I have also been doing that too.
That's good.
So
you're like a model student. You're doing everything you're supposed to.
On top of it all.
Everything that I recommend to students, you're doing. So the first thing I always recommend to students is to apply for scholarships at the institution level, because it's only students that go to that school. It's not going to be quite as competitive as applying for something like the Coca-Cola scholarship, right? Because everyone across the nation is applying for that scholarship. So when you apply for scholarships at your school, a lot of schools will have that central application where it's just one application and potentially multiple opportunities at once. So it helps cut down that work and not feel like you're doing all of the research, you're just doing that one application. Then you could branch out to other scholarships that are connected to you locally. So whether it's the high school that you graduated from, the city that you live in, or your race, ethnicity, or your GPA, or whatever it is that is connected to you, you can start branching out from there. Another tip that I like to give, and I think that you'll find this helpful, is I like to go to other schools' websites to find scholarships that are offered to other students. So ACC, for example, has a list of outside scholarships that are offered to students in the Central Texas area that don't necessarily have to go to ACC. So these scholarships are open to everyone that meets those criteria. A lot of scholarship departments will put resources out on their website for students to utilize, but you can load up on everyone's website resources. So you can go to UT's page, you can go to UNT's page, you can go to Texas State page and see what resources they put out there for students looking at external scholarships, so that you go to places where they've already done the research for you. So it really helps break down that time. Just go to all of these different institutions' pages and see what kind of scholarships they're listing out for more than just their population of students, but for anyone that's interested in applying.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's
well,
awesome.
definitely. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and also here at ACC, Michaela mentioned that we have the Student Money Management Office that hosts Finding the Money workshop. So they tell you about the ins and outs of applying for scholarships and give you some tips about applying. So that's another one that I would recommend, is maybe that Finding the Money workshop, because you can take those skills out of ACC and while you're at UNT.
Right. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Cool. So we're going to take another break. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Renee Esparza, Transfer Resources Director at ACC. Are you considering transferring to a four-year institution? Are you unsure of what you need to do to get there? Tune in to the next episode of The Forum, where ACC staff and a former student who has successfully transferred will provide tips and guidance on where and when to start your transfer planning. Don't miss this episode of The Forum, only on ACC TV.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
We've got to shine a light on community colleges. We've got to shine a light that you don't need a four-year college degree to be successful.
Through ACC, we can provide those bridges to opportunity, those bridges to hope.
This initiative, this effort, what ACC does is just critical to this city right now.
Welcome back to the forum, where we're discussing how to pay for college. We've actually made this last part of our discussion a little interactive, but before we dive into the interactive piece, we do want to circle back to something that really needs some attention in terms of other assistance that we have here at ACC. So Monique shared her experience applying for scholarships at ACC and also applying for scholarships outside of ACC, and Michaela was able to break down that scholarship application. But in terms of other resources, I think that it's important to talk through those. So today we've discussed the FAFSA, which covers grants, loans, and work-study opportunities. We've covered the TASFA, which is specifically for undocumented students, and we've even talked about some scholarships. Turning over to other types of assistance, Michaela, what kind of advice do you have when it comes to students looking at all of their options?
So some of the advice I give students looking for options to pay for college is apply for everything. There's multiple places that they can apply for, and just because they're receiving one benefit doesn't mean that they can't receive another one. One thing to mention, a lot of our VA students think that they can only receive those VA benefits, but in reality they can receive, if they want, the VA benefits, scholarships, and anything that is offered from the FAFSA. Another thing, as some of our students are Capital Ideas students at the third-party sponsor who pays for tuition, they can also receive financial aid at the same time with that assistance.
Yeah, that's a really good point. A lot of the students we've worked with assume that if you're tapping into one benefit through the FAFSA, you may not be able to get other benefits like your veteran affairs benefits or third-party sponsors, like people that will pay your tuition. I'd like to focus in on Capital Idea because that is a really great program that is worth mentioning for our students. Capital Idea is a nonprofit organization that helps students pay for their tuition here at ACC in certain fields. So they help sponsor your IT, your information technology fields, and some healthcare fields as well. So they basically pay your tuition as long as you're meeting their eligibility criteria. And then the financial aid that you get, you can use that for all your other expenses. So you can use that for your books, your supplies, your housing, your food, your transportation, really everything else that goes into making you go to school successfully and actually completing school. So that's really nice that there's other sources out there that help pay for your tuition. Another example of a third-party sponsor is your workplace. So people may go to places where they work and they pay them to go back to school in a sense. So they either reimburse their tuition or even pay for their classes up front. ACC is one example. So ACC actually gives Michaela and I, as employees, 3 free classes a year. So I've used that for professional development. I use that for creative development. I've used it for a variety of different things. I've actually taken the GRE the GRE prep exam twice, but I haven't taken the GRE yet. But it's a free class that they're giving as an employee. So it's really worth checking with your employer in the future if that's something that they can provide in terms of like tuition reimbursement or even paying for your classes up front. So all of this that we've discussed today is a lot of information, and I know that a lot of our viewers are probably like, whoa, where do I even start? So I would advise them to go to austincc.edu/support, because that website has a whole list of academic resources to help students, some personal resources to help students, and financial resources, which is everything that we've covered today. So under that financial resources section, you'll see everything from the FAFSA to scholarships to third-party sponsors to VA benefits. Everything that we've listed is going to be on that website, so students can check that out if they have any more questions or want to dive deep into some of these topics that we've covered.
There's also some personal support as well, so if maybe you're having some trouble with child care or anything like that, they do offer those resources there, or a place to find those resources on that webpage.
That's a really good point, yeah. So a lot of people think that financing your education is going to be enough, but you also have to make sure that your personal support system is there and your academic support system is there, because those three all combine to make you go through school with less stress. So whether it's you seeking academic advising because you need to make sure that your classes are well, or you're seeking the financial aid office because you need some additional financial support, or personal support through maybe our support services who helps with childcare or even like affordable books support. So a lot of things to be found. Again, that's austincc.edu/support. So now we're turning to some questions that we've gotten from our Twitter and social media pages. So we asked students what their common questions are, and we're going to answer these questions together. So the first question, I think I'll let Michaela take over this one. It's asking, should I apply for financial aid through the FAFSA even if I don't think I qualify for any grants?
Absolutely. Always apply. The worst you can find out is you're only eligible for loans, and even at that, I still recommend doing it or completing the process, because what happens if you're in an emergency, and that loan can really help. So it's good to have it on file no matter what. I have had students who didn't think they would be eligible for anything other than loans. It turns out they were eligible for the full amount of money that we could offer them.
Yeah.
So,
that's
you
a
never
good
know.
point. Yeah, I think it's just always best to apply anyway, because your eligibility could change from year to year as well.
Yeah.
So you might be getting, maybe not grant money one year, but the next year your financial situation has changed. So it's something that you may be eligible for in that situation. So the next question we have here is, do I have to apply for FAFSA every year or every semester? Do either of you want to tackle that one?
I'll go ahead and take it. So the FAFSA is done every year. So like we mentioned earlier, it does become available on October 1st every calendar year for the next academic year. Some students think it's every semester. It may get confusing, especially if you're not a traditional student. You're not you're not starting in the fall. Maybe you're starting in the spring or the summer. It's still just one a year.
Yeah, awesome. Yes. So this third question, Winnie, I'd like to know if, are there some overlooked ways to pay for college that you found out about later?
Well, are there any? I mean, like you said, with work and being able to also do that with your job may be able to offer you pay or reimbursement. I work for HEB, so if those of you that work for HEB, because I know a lot of us do out here in Texas, so HEB actually offers a scholarship. So that is one thing that I have learned about that I actually do plan on applying to. But other than that, I haven't actually been able to find much other than just making sure that if you are working, that you also have a saving account to the side for emergencies and also for school to separate that money. That's also been a big thing for me.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, that especially learning that your employer offers a scholarship. That's something we didn't even talk about. Yeah, that's a lot of different places offer that scholarship, and I think really the most overlooked that I've noticed is scholarships in general, because a lot of students just assume they're not going to be eligible for it, or that somebody else is going to be better at it. So definitely scholarships is the most overlooked, even though it's probably the one that people know about the most.
Yes, like, oh, scholarships, but I'm not going to apply.
Right, exactly. So our fourth question is here: is it worth it to take out student loans, and how much should I borrow? Do you want to?
I'll
chime in on
tackle
that
this
one? Okay.
No one can tell you whether it's worth it or not. It is strictly what is best for you, and only you know that. If you're a dependent or married, it helps to talk to people who are familiar with your financial situation. A lot of our out-of-district students, their grants don't cover the tuition, so they have to take out the loans. So as a basis, we like to tell students, only take it out if you need it. So if you know you need it, you know you can't get by without it, whether it's tuition or just the extra expenses, then take it out. If you don't think that you need it, you can always reject it and ask us to put it back out there later. That is a possibility as well. You can also ask for reduced loans, so you don't have to take out everything that we've offered you. So if you only think that you need half of it or even a quarter of it, we can make that happen as well. So it is up to you. If you want us to kind of help you nail out some details, we can absolutely do that, but in the end, it's your decision.
Yeah, I think that answers it perfectly. Do you have anything else to add, Denise?
I was just going to add basically what you said, though, to just make sure that you're taking what you need, because I'm actually being faced with that right now with transferring, because I'm not being offered as much as I need and grant money to go to UNT. So it's because for most of us, we haven't established credit, or we're working on establishing credit right now, and taking out loans is not the way that any of us really want to start it, but it's kind of how most of us do. And definitely knowing that later on, coming down the road, that you're going to have to deal with debt. So I would definitely say take only what you need, and that you know that you can pay back within a certain amount of time. So
definitely, I think that's definitely something that a lot of our students are going to be faced with when they do transfer, because most of our students are in district, so most of them are going to have a cheaper tuition rate where they could maybe manage with a payment plan, or maybe manage with some grant money offered, or some sort of resource can help fill that gap, and they may not need to turn to loans. But once you go to a more expensive school, it becomes more of something that you might have to seriously consider, because it really is something that is going to help cover that gap for just your tuitions even. So when I was in school, I had to take out loans, so it's definitely one of those things that I had to sit down and consider, because realistically, I couldn't afford to pay for everything with just my grant money or just my scholarship money. I went to a pretty expensive school, and that was the only option for me. So the good thing about the student loans is, like Michaela and Moniz were saying, you really only want to take out what you need, but when you are taking out student loans, you're getting a really good interest rate for those loans, and you're getting a really good payoff term. So you're allowed to pay it off over 10 years versus maybe going to a credit card, which is going to be a super high interest rate. You're going to pay it off. You're going to have to pay it off a lot sooner, or even a personal loan. Those could be higher interest rates in general. So if you're going to have to borrow money, borrow it from the federal government, because that student loan is probably going to be a better option.
They'll also work with your income as well. So after you've graduated, you can apply for what's called the income-driven repayment plan. And
I'm on that one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, same here. And they have several different options. So it's not just one. So you're most likely going to find something that will work for you. And the interest rate is locked in, so that's never going to rise. It's going to be whatever, unless you consolidate. If you consolidate, it may change. But for the most part, it's going to stay the same, and you only have to pay what you can pay. So it's much more manageable.
Yeah, definitely. So the last question we have here is, can I still apply for financial aid even if my classes have already started?
So I think we may have touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you can. We have students, I actually had a student today. She submitted the FAFSA last week, and she went to school in the fall and this semester, and we're going to be able to back pay her for both semesters, and then we're even going to be able to set her up for the summer. So it's definitely not too late.
Yeah, awesome. So yes, apply for financial aid, even if you haven't applied before, even if your classes have already started, you can still potentially get some of that money paid back. We always advise that you apply early, just because there's some resources that are first come, first serve, like our state grants are first come, first serve, our work study funds are first come, first serve, but there's some other resources out there that they're going to be available no matter when you apply. One of those examples is the federal Pell Grant. So if a student's eligible for that federal Pell Grant, they can get that anytime they apply, as long as they're eligible for it. The same thing with student loans. That money doesn't run out. It's money that you're borrowing. But yeah, always apply early, and if you haven't applied early, go ahead and still apply so you can get some of those funds offered to you. Thank you so much for watching the forum. My name is Belinda Pena. We'll see you next time.